Hello, everyone. This is Chala Dincoy, CEO and founder of The Repositioning Expert, coming to you with another edition of my crazy podcast, Naked Marketing, where we talk about our honest marketing mistakes that are like cautionary tales for everyone who's listening to us. My guest today is Anca Trifan from the very cleverly named Trifan Events. You see, I love that. I love that name. Welcome, Anca.
Thank you so much for having me. It's such a pleasure to be here, Chala.
I'm so glad you're here. Now, tell everyone what you do and who you help.
Well, first I have to do a quick disclaimer of why my voice sounds so congested. This has been a fun 1 week in the making of a cold and sinus infection that people still get, believe it or not. That has nothing to do with COVID or Omicron or whatever other variant we have going on. So I am getting used to this voice. I'm like, this doesn't sound like me.
Oh, I know. But I'm so glad you're still here anyway.
Yeah. So if people can get over that and know that they can get sick over the airways. My name is Anca Trifan. As you mentioned, I am a certified meeting professional and a digital event strategist, also the founder, creator, and CEO of Trifan Events, which is a boutique event planning and production agency that is offering event planning, experience design, and production management for live, virtual, and hybrid events. I also host a podcast called Events Demystified, which is packed with tips, tools, strategy for anyone, beginner or pro, in the event industry. And for the past 2.5 years, I got the chance to interview some really cool people, event professionals, local, national, global, and learn a few things, about their personal and professional experience. And to top it all off, of course, I'm also the founder of Women in Events, Technology and Production, which is a community that creates space for belonging for other women leaders in event planning, in technology, in live streaming, in content creation, everything event production. It's a force that I feel like it could be multiplied because we are dedicated to making space and supporting one another and providing expertise to other women in tech and production. And I'm a mom of 2, wife, and everything else in between, right? I mean, so many hats that we feel. I feel like there isn't one woman out there probably that doesn't feel at least 5 hats, like full time.
I love it. Well, maybe not quite as many as you, but I like the association that you're talking about, the group with the women in tech. That's really great. So, I mean, I'm hearing from, because you know that I'm an elevator pitch expert, because I have another podcast called Polish My Pitch. So when I listen to your elevator pitch, I'm hearing some sort of repositioning into digital, and I'm loving it because I'm imagining that's happened. And I don't know if that you were genius enough to predict the pandemic and had positioned yourself as a digital event planner before, or whether that came as a result of the pandemic. So how did you navigate this pandemic as an event planner?
Well, that's a fantastic question and insight. Although, to be honest, I don't think any event professional had the crystal ball working properly to say that whatever this was going to be back in March of 2020 was going to last, 2 years now. And we've all, had to adapt and pivot. And I think that word has been used and abused more than we can count, and make the best out of the situation and the circumstance. For me, fortunately, because I come from a heavy event production and technology background, live streaming was not something new. Doing events digitally was not something new. Not at the extent that we're doing them now, because there wasn't any need for it, but as an extension of the in-person event, especially for corporate accounts that were global and they couldn't get everyone in the same room, or for one reason or another, they wanted to provide that option as a live streaming option for their attendees. So to me, that wasn't oh my gosh, what am I going to do now? Obviously, there was a moment of shock because all the accounts, all the pipeline that I was working hard on, beginning of 2020, just almost disappeared. Everyone was like, "Oh, freeze!" Yeah, I was like, "Oh God, what are we gonna do? We gotta cancel everything." No, hold off. Let's not cancel everything. Yeah, some events make sense to be postponed, which a lot of them happen to do that for the fall, which made fall become a crazy fall in 2020, because as we know, going back to in person wasn't possible, even though in the spring of 2020 everybody was hoping to. So anyway, the idea was like, well, let's figure out how we can take this event that was in person and reformat it and remarket it and turn it into a digital virtual event. And I've done that for a lot of my nonprofit clients. I was very much involved in the nonprofit sector. And then 2021 came about to actually, delve more into the conference and meetings and association sector, which is a completely different ball game when it comes to events. Also, I think it's a little bit more easier for someone like me to deal with that, because you have recurring clients with multi-day events, and it's always good business. So this whole strategy really was a matter of like, from a marketing point of view, because we're, talking about some marketing strategies, was how can we reposition this event so that people that are now very disappointed that they can't attend it, but also aware of all the health risks, they still find it attractive and they still show up on screen, because that was the idea. If we're going to raise money for all these nonprofit organizations to support their mission and their vision, we need to get people on screen. But once we get them on screen, we also have to captivate them long enough to be able to do this, whatever, 45-minute, 1 hour, very focused programming, and get our ROI for that event, that we put on. So it was a lot of strategy and a lot of thinking into how we can make it, one, turn our clients into accepting this new breed of events, because many were not very open to the idea of changing things that they've always done in one way, or they only knew one way to do events, right? And then two, how do we turn the audience in our favor to come and show up? Because once you have the audience participating, then the client, they see the metrics, they see the data, all the analytics are there for a lot of the digital events. That's one of the biggest wins. I feel like a lot of the data was not there for in person, because it's like a leaky bucket. You can't really, in an in-person event, figure out where does this person go, how do they interact, how many people they connect with, like what's exactly the map when they are at an in-person events, like how many times do they see this poster, like how many times do they interact with this message, whatever. So for virtual events, that has been one of the biggest wins, because now we had an overview of how people interact with content, with sponsorships, with messaging, and marketing efforts are then more focused in one direction or another. And then obviously reach is a bigger, also big benefit of the in-person, of the virtual events, which the in-person events still had, but very limited to the capacity of whatever venue you were at or whatever resort you were at, right? So so that was one of the main focuses of 2020. And then I feel like right now we're refocusing ourselves into making hybrid attractive, because say by end of summer of 2021, we were 100% again sure, that crystal ball so faulty, that we were going to go to in person in the fall. Well, that didn't happen because we had Delta variant, we had now Omicron, right? So we're back to like, okay, even if we're in person in one capacity or another, based on where you are in the world and what restrictions you're faced with, and what, health, conditions are around your area or your event, you might want to do a smaller in-person event with a larger reach for the digital event. So that's what we call a hybrid, right? Where you still have some people joining in person, and maybe they are more ready to take on that risk, whatever that looks like. I mean, I was ready and vaccinated 5 times, whatever, how many times it takes. I'm like, I want to go in person, I want to go in person. And I'm selling digital events, right? But still, I know how much the human interaction matters and how the face-to-face is important to our connections and our relationship building, and in just, the human interaction that we all starved for over the pandemic. So now it's more,
right? It's so unbelievable, the difference between in person. But like so yeah, tell me about now. So tell me how you do your marketing now. Like I know that's what you're doing. You're doing hybrid, but how do you actually get clients now in the post-pandemic?
so one of my big strategies, because I am a content creator, aside from all the other things that I do, is using video as a means of marketing. And I'm talking about branded video that, even for organizations that hire me to do some of their content creation and elevate their brand with a lot of the graphics and the additional, sparkle that you add to a just regular Zoom meeting per se, right? I want to make sure that it represents their brand in the best way possible and is cohesive across all channels. It's formatted to the right channels, to the right length, and the messaging is focused. And you just
you're using to get your own clients. You're using video. Sorry. Oh gosh.
I'm sorry about that. Yes.
Okay.
Yes, I think video is a huge marketing strategy that a lot of people don't take enough advantage of.
So it's amazing because it's quite passive, I find. Like, content is passive. So how are you using it to actually convert complete strangers?
Of course, I'm getting a fit of coughing right now. Okay. The biggest actually lead generator for me is a video podcast that I do. One, I show my expertise because I talk about event technology and production and strategy and all the other things that make your event, whether that may be a virtual or a in-person or hybrid, a success. Some of the mistakes that I've done, or event planners that I get to interview, or event professionals that I get to interview have done. So don't repeat those mistakes, right? And by the fact that it's video, it's very branded to my brand, very branded to the to my guest brand as well. So it kind of like serves a two-way favor. Like I represent my brand the best way, but I also represent my guest the best way. And then I cut and I chop like very short highlight reels from all my episodes, and I would constantly promote that on my channels consistently, because I think one of the things that has to happen is you have to be consistent in whatever efforts you're doing. There's a lot of people that start a lot of efforts, especially marketing, and then they just kind of like get lost in the process. It takes commitment, it takes work, but you have to be consistent. And then, obviously in the beginning, if you're not a marketing pro, because marketing is not really my background, I learned how to use marketing tools to elevate my brand, so much so that my brand became a threat to a lot of the other competition, because I'm always there, I'm always representing well, and I always know what I'm talking about. So those are elements that do put you in a category of an expert in your field, in your niche. My niche is super small. Like there's not a lot of women out there that talk audiovisual productions. Like that's just the case.
Anca, I'm afraid to ask you a question because
go ahead.
I feel terrible. I feel like, get some water. So I was going to ask you, okay, let's talk about the naked marketing mistake. So let's get it out of the way. This is where you confess what, your most expensive or silliest marketing mistake was. Do you remember what it was?
Well, let's get out of the way. Yeah. Before I start coughing, I can stop. Right. Okay. So I need to give a little bit of background on that, because come end of 2020, I was in the process of, one second. So come end of 2020, I was in the process of renegotiating some of the contracts that I had with a lot of clients, a lot of partners. And I did a lot of events, and I brought in a lot of leads to some of my partners, but then I didn't feel like I was getting paid at the rate that some of my male counterparts are and were. And this is a problem, a completely different topic for a different conversation, which is very much, something that some of the females in my field feel like it's very real to them. Like they can bring all this expertise and all this experience, and then still, when it comes to, the paycheck, you're like, why am I getting paid less? So I was relinquishing some of those, and things didn't necessarily pan out the way that I wanted to. At the same time, I'm very much a person that would never break bridges or, burn bridges. If I can save the relationship, that's really my number one priority. So in wanting to save the relationship with this particular partner, I said, okay, you know what? I'm going to leave behind 80% of the leads that I brought you. I'm not going to take any of them with me. However, if they come back to me, I'm not going to say no. It's going to be fair game. So that put me beginning of 2021 in a position where I was like, oh shit, I gotta start hustling again, because here I am, needing to feed myself one way or another. I need events. So also in the same sort of like the picture that I'm drawing here, I was very much working at a national level, had different things happening in different places. And I haven't necessarily had the need so much to be involved in my local community, because for the last 6 years, like prior to the pandemic, I was constantly traveling for events. I was constantly going, every weekend I was somewhere else in a different place. So COVID in so many ways kind of brought me to the realization, man, I don't really have a lot of relationships here locally. There's a lot of things happening here, but I have not put time, because I didn't feel the need to invest in these relationships. So what can I do to actually, fix some of that, to help that? So obviously I started, meeting local event planners and trying to, get into the community, to realize that this community is very small, it's very particular, it's very like, well, you're an outsider, you're not from here. There's a little bit of scarcity mindset happening as well. So there's a lot of things, they're like piling up. So in my efforts to try to connect with the community, I went on LinkedIn, I started reaching out to people, only to realize that that was perceived by some of my competition or some of the people in the field, in the industry that I'm in locally, as pastoring efforts, as in you're trying too hard to gain access to some of those people that you didn't necessarily have a rapport with before, and you're an outsider. Like, why are you doing that? Now, in so many ways, I didn't feel like I was crossing any boundaries. I'm reaching out to people that I'm interested in meeting, and if there is like a common interest for them to meet me, they would say yes. They can always say no, right? So, but I was also, as I am, when I want something, I go after it. I don't just ask for permission. I might, have to go and possibly apologize later, but I don't ask permission first. I'll just go and then if the door shuts.
I mean, that's how we met. So I don't understand which part is the mistake. Like, prospecting on LinkedIn is the number one way that I get clients after the pandemic. So
girl, I did not understand either. Like, there's four or five things that were sort of pointed to me as being bad things, and I'm like, in any other that's circumstance, those are good things. Like, why am I being the bad guy here?
Mistake. Maybe the marketing mistake, Anca, is listening to naysayers about your marketing.
Well, I think from my perspective, looking back on the situation, I could have been a little bit more delicate, knowing certain intricacies in this market, right? In this particular market, maybe that works at a national level, like me going after a client from New York, or high value, whatever client from, I don't know, like California, LA, that there's the expectation that, you're going to initiate a conversation. You're not going to wait for them to come to you, However, in a smaller, I guess, more community oriented market where everybody knows everybody and everything is kind of more of a word of mouth referral, to do that is perceived as aggressive. To do that is perceived as, well, you first need to be introduced by someone that knows you, that can vet for you before you can even send the message out to reach to the person. I'm like, well, I'm sorry, but I don't have that type of relationships where people don't know me from Adam. I moved into this community 6 years ago. I'm very much new,
I don't agree. I don't agree at all with this being a mistake, because most of the time people don't even indicate where they're from on their profile. So you could be prospecting somebody next door, or you can be prospecting somebody in another part of the world. There's no such rule. But I guess what you're saying is that the people that you were reaching out to were already connected to your competitors. I guess that's the part that,
yes, exactly,
that I'm missing here. So that's why your competitors then took issue with you specifically
exactly
targeting them. Okay,
exactly.
so I mean, that is a